Hello, Dine Sports and everyone watching. Welcome to our breakdown of UFC 287, Pereira versus Adesanya 2. This is an awesome card coming to us live from Miami, Florida this weekend with Israel Adesanya looking to get back the middleweight title won by Alex Pereira in what was their third fight, now their fourth fight in combat sports. Two of the best kickboxers in the world, and a stack card underneath it. I'm really excited for this one. Nick, how are we feeling about the card this weekend?
Yeah, really good card this week for sure. Obviously, an awesome main event between Adesanya Pereira. A lot of great name value, top to bottom. Um, and yeah, coming off a week off, just really chomping at the bit to put in some bets, some underdogs I'm liking. Yeah, plenty of reasons to like this card. And in front of a crowd in Miami, it should be a fun one to watch live as well.
Yeah, this crowd's getting a treat. I mean, the main card, really exciting. Starting, of course, at the top with the main event. Adesanya, one of my favorite fighter here. Really needing to get a win up against Pereira in their rematch for the title. We saw in that first bout, Izzy up convincingly. 3 rounds to one would have it. Looking like the superior fighter, hurting Pereira in the very first round. Racking up nearly 7 minutes of control time on 4 takedown attempts. Really, I'd like to see him wrestle a bit more in this spot, but I mean, again, as I was saying, two of the best kickboxers in the world. We really can't rely on that being the case, especially with him looking to prove something here, trying to get this win, trying to get over the hump against a guy that's just haunted him since the kickboxing days. The only person we've really seen beat Izzy. While he's 3-0, obviously in these fights, there have been a lot of moments for Izzy. A standing 8 count for Pereira in their kickboxing match prior, and then a stoppage in the title fight last year that was a bit questionable. I mean, obviously, we don't want to see Izzy taking unnecessary shots, things like that. I think he did have a moment, left to recover before you need to call that fight, but nonetheless, he was rocked by Pereira. It can happen again. The guy has the power to do so. We've seen what he's done already at this level against the highest level opponents, and against a guy who doesn't pose a intense grappling threat like Adesanya. It makes sense. A lot of people thinking Pereira is going to get the job done again here. I think it's got to be Izzy. I mean, he's landed 53% of his significant strike attempts in the first fight against Pereira. I think he has the ability to touch him. I think he's going to touch him a lot more here. The main thing is just addressing the game plan that got him caught the last fight, making sure the leg kicks aren't going to eat away at him, take away his base, as was the case prior. And I think again, wrestling is going to be key to success. At least mixing in those looks, getting Pereira on the mat, tiring him out. And, a bit of the press we've seen from Izzy this week seems like that could be, something he looks for. Putting him on his back was one thing that, I had seen in the media presence. So Izzy now a minus 135 favorite, very slight. Been a favorite every fight of his UFC career. This is close to a pick him here, and I got to bet him. I think there's value on him on this line. There's much more I could say, but yeah, he's the pick for me in this spot. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on the rematch.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty straightforward fight when you break it down. I mean, we've already seen these guys not only in the last 5 round fight, but in those kickboxing matches. And I agree with you. I think the difference here, if Izzy's going to win, is going to be that grappling. And not only that, I also think game plan versus game plan. Like, we're dealing with two of the best strikers in the world. Obviously, ridiculously high level of chess that's going on here in terms of what's going to be happening in this middleweight championship fight. But really, I think it comes down to game plan. I mean, Pereira was chopping away the legs, and Izzy, coming out of the fight in post-fight interviews, was saying that dealing with the leg injury, if it was even an injury, or like nerve damage, whatever it was really preventing him from having the movement that we've become to know him for. I mean, when you rewatch the fight, he looked good. He was still moving. He was still kicking. But if Pereira can do that again, I mean, it's going to be a real uphill climb for Adesanya here. So I agree. I think I want to see him mix in the wrestling. I want to see him kick more early, try to keep the distance against Pereira, who is ridiculously big for a middleweight. It's baffling this guy makes 185 pounds. I mean, Adesanya towers towers over everyone else in this division, but he just doesn't against Pereira. So those advantages are gone. I do think they're right on the same level in terms of technical striking ability. I do favor Israel in terms of winning minutes with the volume, but we did see Pereira later in that fight do a good job kind of cutting off the cage, starting to find angles. I expect he's going to try to be aggressive in that way here earlier, a little bit less hesitant to close the distance. Obviously, he knows what he's capable of. He's knocked him out more than once. So you just have to wonder. And I mean, we're coming off a fight where we saw Leon gain a ton of confidence once he had the belt around his waist. Everyone's talking about that Teddy Atlas quote this week. Once you get the belt, you're 30% better. I don't know if that's a fact, but there's certainly some truth to that. But obviously, this is Adesanya's hero arc. I mean, big anime fan, like it's the story. I mean, it's written here, but as we've seen time and time again, the stories don't always go the way the fighters or the UFC wants them to. I think the UFC would love to see Izzy win here and set up that trilogy fight, maybe towards the end of the summer. That would be one of the biggest fights of the year, of the past few years, certainly. But yeah, I mean, I'm on Adesanya here. I think you know me. I don't usually pick knockout artists unless they're really facing someone with chin issues. And yeah, I think it was a good stoppage, but at the same time, I do think Adesanya is still the better minute winner here, even if this fight's mostly on the feet. I do expect him to mix in grappling more. It's like he's been hinting in all these press conferences. I heard someone ask, like, if you could have any previous UFC champion help train you for this fight, who would it be? And he's like, oh, DC, so I could work on. And then he like caught himself. And then what you were saying too, it's like, yeah, I want to put him on his back. And he's like, oh, I said too much. Like, is he playing mind games? Is he seriously going to go that direction? I think either way, that's a big narrative here that favors Adesanya if he can get it going. And it's not like he's going to be some amazing grappler, but I do think he'll have advantages on Pereira. And if Pereira is throwing those hooks, maybe timing some of those to get takedowns, he's going to have to be very careful entering. I'll probably put a small bet on Adesanya here on the money line, but I'd be lying if I said it was confident. I mean, I find issue being confident on either side here. I mean, we've seen Adesanya win more of the minutes in all of these fights, and then he somehow loses on all of these fights. And I mean, yeah, it just feels like maybe the pendulum swings back in the other direction this time around. I'm going to be pulling for Izzy. I like the tenured UFC fighter. You know, I'm more of a UFC fan than a kickboxing fan. So just off that alone, I think it's good for the promotion, good for the sport if Izzy gets the win here, setting up that trilogy in MMA. But yeah, can't say I'm super confident. Really hope he mixes in the wrestling. But Pereira is just terrifying, man. Everything about him.
Yeah, and I mean, like from the standpoint of just looking like technically looking, betting with the mind and not the heart, I think Izzy would still be the play for me here. I'm certainly not confident, not as confident as I was going into, the first bout
Yeah.
with Pereira. But it's just the dude's proven to be very hittable too. Like we saw it against Bruno Silva as well as the fights previous with Izzy. And mixing in the grappling, I could see him landing big shots on the feet. I mean, again, had him rocked at the first round of their matchup. It's sort of the same case in Whitaker fights as well. Has big moments, doesn't always capitalize, goes to decision a few times. I could see this being one where he just needs to put a nail in a coffin, find that finish. And, whether it comes on the feet or he takes a more measured approach and grinds out Pereira using the grappling. I see those being the two clear paths. And, Izzy, slight favorite, seems like a good bet to me. It is just obviously one that he needs and certainly a concerning spot for the former champion.
Yeah, and just to take kind of who's fighting out of it a little bit, if we're just talking about the betting lines, I mean, whenever you get the champion as an underdog, usually there's some value on that. We just saw it with Leon, obviously. But yeah, I'm on Adesanya here. Very tough fight to call, though. Really looking forward to it.
Yeah, going to be a good one. Exciting co-main event as well. We'll break down next this welterweight bout between Gilbert Burns and George Masvidal. Both, in line, certainly for another shot at the title in the, coming months. A win here would set them up nicely. Gilbert Burns sitting as a large favorite, minus 475, minus 500 some spots here in this matchup against Masvidal. Both older guys, both older welterweights. Masvidal, obviously, the ability to pull off brilliant knockouts in the past, certainly has a puncher's chance in any fight. And I think a pretty good chance here against a guy in Burns who we've seen also get hit a lot. Certainly somebody who, Masvidal has get-ups. He wasn't dominated by Colby in grappling. Like there were situations where he actually did fight up in the early going of that fight. But you also have to keep in mind Colby's grappling control and wrestling pressure are the best in the division. Burns is, a lights out jiu-jitsu guy, but certainly not one in terms of dominance and control when it comes to grappling. However, effective takedowns have looked much better for Burns since his matchup with Usman. He's getting fights to the mat. He's keeping them there longer. And he just has such a decisive advantage in the grappling department here. I think the most likely outcome we see in this fight is him taking Masvidal down and, winning by any means necessary, whether that be grinding out a decision like Colby was able or, finding a finish using his jiu-jitsu in this matchup. I feel like a lot of people may be betting on Masvidal here. But this is a huge check for the guy. Big pay-per-view card in Miami. I'd really like to see him show out. He's going to come to fight. He's going to come to scrap. And if Burns fights a smart fight, takes him down, I see him paying off this price tag. Probably getting a win with a lot of ground control time here. But obviously can't fault anyone for picking Masvidal. I just think at this stage of his career, and where Burns is at, we're going to see Burns get his hands raised.
Yeah, I mean, a younger Masvidal, this is the type of matchup he would thrive in. A lot of people citing the fight against Damian Maia this week, and rightfully so. Probably the only better jiu-jitsu practitioner that Masvidal has faced compared to Gilbert Burns. But Maia certainly doesn't have the takedown entries or the wrestling that Gilbert Burns has. So there's something to be drawn from that fight, but I don't think people should put too much into it. What I will say, though, is Masvidal does have really solid submission defense. So I think some people are going to try to play Burns inside the distance. Obviously, you're getting a much better number, but at the same time, I do think it's more likely than not if Burns wins, it does go to the scorecards. I will say this: Burns' striking certainly underrated. Masvidal's defensive grappling certainly underrated. They are closer in age than I think most people expect, but Masvidal, man, I mean, he's been through it. Not only does he have 51 fights on his professional record, but this is a guy who's been fighting in backyards Miami for years before that, taking a lot of damage. Yeah, didn't always live a professional athlete lifestyle. I was watching some funny old clips of him, like old UFC embeddeds, where he's like at the McDonald's drive-through the week of the fight. Like, I mean, he's really changed. He's very focused this time around. I like that he's been training with Johnny Eblen, Bellator champion, a really good pressure grappler, kind of a similar matchup to what he's going to be seeing here with Burns. But Eblen, similar to Colby, similar to Usman, doesn't really have that jiu-jitsu threat on the ground. So it is a very different matchup. I think the line is a little bit wide, not wide enough for me to want to take a shot on Masvidal here. I mean, the UFC is really pumping him this week, as is ESPN. Like, tons of features on him, all these interviews. Brett Akimoto walking around Miami with him. I mean, half of the embedded videos have been Masvidal. But the one thing I've picked up on is that he's talking about, hey, if I don't win here, maybe I'm done. And as soon as you hear that retirement word get in some of these guys' mouth, usually that means it's time to just completely fade them. When this fight was announced, I was all over Burns. I mean, watching Masvidal's camp, some of the training footage with Eblen, I do think the line's a little wide again, like I just mentioned, not to be redundant, but Burns is certainly the side here. I think the striking discrepancy isn't as wide as it was earlier in Masvidal's career. I mean, he's still the much better technical striker. He's going to set traps. He still has really strong feints, but he lost a lot of that speed that he's become known for. And while Burns is a little bit chinny, which is what makes this interesting and has me kind of hesitating to really tie him into a bunch of parlays in that minus 400, minus 500 range, he's very clearly the favorite here. He's looked much better lately. We haven't seen Masvidal win a fight since 2019 against Diaz, who's obviously no longer in the promotion, and then the Askren knee, which feels like a decade ago. And yeah, Burns still competing at a super high level, continues to improve. So yeah, I'm on Gilbert here. I think he's the pick. But yeah, something about Jorge in Miami. First time UFC's been there in 20 years. They're really pumping this narrative. But yeah, I think they could really flip that just into a nice retirement for Jorge if he does get put away here by Burns. So I'm on Burns. Wouldn't fault someone for taking the dog shot at Masvidal. It is kind of a ridiculous line, considering how high level he's been most of his career. But yeah, stylistically, very, very brutal matchup.
Yeah, and card in Miami, not really foreign territory to Burns, trains in Boca Raton. And then, yeah, I mean, when it comes to this matchup, again, Burns isn't someone I'm often going to back as a huge favorite. I took Magny against him in the last fight, and he just got that quick arm triangle choke. Again, his ability to control guys, his jiu-jitsu edge, I think that's going to be the deciding factor here. And Yeah, Masvidal on all the embedded stuff. Again, guy sells pay-per-views. I don't think this is going to
That's
be
what it
it
is.
for him. He's going to fight a McGregor or someone like that if he's not
Or
getting a
maybe Kevin
win. And
Holland, who's been
yeah,
fighting in the hallways of the
the
hotels.
hotel hall trying to pick a fight, but Holland has his hands full as well this weekend, so we'll be looking at his fight coming up next. But first, bantamweights. This could be fight of the night here. Adrian Yanez minus 190 right now, going up against Rob Font. Two strikers, two really high volume strikers. Both guys throw more than 6 significant strikes per minute, or land more than 6 significant strikes per minute. With Font going 3 straight 5 round fights now, with nearly 200 significant strikes landed, just absolutely peppers out shots. What he was doing early against Marlon Vera, throwing an unbelievable amount of volume, and a boxer with great hands going up against another boxer, Adrian Yanez, a guy who's now 5-0 in the UFC, someone I've picked in each of his UFC appearances, and just somebody I'm a big fan of with those quick hands, really crisp boxing, and a killer instinct that I really haven't seen many other show in the bantamweight division. The way he jumps on guys once they get hurt, once he has them slightly rocked, it's brutal. The way you finish Tony Kelly, the way you finish Randy Costa, and a guy like Rob Font who's been knocked down 5 times in his last 2 bouts. I think Yanez is certainly going to have big moments in this spot and the opportunity to finish him. I was really in a fight that goes to decision. A guy like Rob Font, if he's able to hang around, put out that volume, it's going to be a really close one on the judges' scorecards. I just favor Yanez. I think he's more technically sound. I think he lands the bigger shots. He has the better power. And that's going to be the deciding factor here against Rob Font. If he's able to get him hurt, get him rocked early on in this fight, I see Yanez capitalizing and keeping the streak going. I think he's really good. I think he has like top 5 boxing in the UFC. Going up against another boxer, that's a path to success. If you were to fight a grappler, something like that at bantamweight, it's going to be a different story. But I like Yanez in the spot.
Yeah, I'm on the other side. I just think the line's off. I mean, I totally get playing Giannis here, but to me, this fight's closer to a pick 'em. I mean, Font we saw drop continuously against Vera, but he himself said he came back too quickly from that Aldo fight. Was talking about he still had like fractures in his face and things like that. So sometimes we get on fighters for long layoffs. We haven't seen Font in over 10 months, but I really like that he took his time coming back here. Seems really focused heading into this one. Obviously, like you said, two very technical boxers. But to me, I mean, I just look at the level of competition. I mean, it's nice to see that Giannis knocked out Tony Kelly. Obviously, everyone was happy to see that, given Kelly's kind of a scumbag. But yeah, that's a low-level opponent who's no longer with the UFC. Fought a very close split decision against Davy Graham. Probably shouldn't have been a split. I think he won convincingly, but at the same time, closer fight than anyone expected. Really struggled in the first round to get going against Randy Costa, and I think that could be important here because Font also kind of a slow starter. So the first round, I do expect these guys to kind of feel each other out. Both underrated grapplers, which is a narrative I don't think anyone's really talking about. Yanez does have a black belt. We haven't seen it really at all yet in the UFC, but Font actually really decent wrestling. We saw it at times against Garbrandt, at times against Vera as well earlier in that fight. He's averaging over a takedown completed per 15 minutes. And like you said, coming off 5 round fights for Font, that certainly should favor him in terms of cardio. I don't really see Yanez as someone who's going to fade. I do think he has the speed and power advantage on the feet here, but in terms of level of competition, in terms of cardio, in terms of boxing defense, I actually like Font. We see Yanez take a lot of damage. Even in the Tony Kelly fight, he was pretty beat up early in that fight, just taking some of those kicks and punches and exchanges. I don't think Font's going to put Yanez away by any means, but where I'm getting like, I don't know, I'm looking at Bovada right now, like plus 150, climbing to plus 160 on some books. I just see all the value on Font. It's really a level of competition thing for me here. I mean, if Yanez catches him, it wouldn't shock me. Like you said, we've seen Font dropped. But I think a big product of that was that he rushed back into that Vera fight where most of those knockdowns took place. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, he's getting knocked down, but he's not getting knocked out. So I like Fawn here. I just think he's value. And honestly, I'm not going to be surprised if Yanez wins. I think this plays out really close. And like you said, this is very likely to be a fight of the night. I don't know. I see all the value on Fawn here as the vet. Yanez still improving. I expect he continues to improve, and I expect we see the best version of Yanez here as well. But This just does feel like a major step up in competition for him. I don't think he's fought anyone even close to Font's level yet. Whereas Font, this is certainly a step down from what he's been seeing recently. So I like Font. Won't fault you for taking Yanez, but I do see him as the value side.
Yeah, I like it. Should be again fight of the night potential here. I'd say the front runner for it on this card. Another fun one though is the welterweight scrap between Kevin Holland and Santiago Ponzinibbio. This card pretty top heavy, but the main card certainly going to deliver. Holland always puts on a show. And now facing Ponzinibbio, who's coming off a great win his last time out. Catching Alex Morono in the third round, finding a finish as his man was starting to fade in a fight that Morono sort of had him in the early going. I think Holland's going to have the edge here. He is the slight favorite sizable favorite minus 260. Yeah, currently. He has the length, he has the speed, a reach advantage of 8 inches over Ponzinibbio. I think is going to play a huge factor. Additionally, Holland's ability to mix in kicks and attacks from distance. He does so better than Ponzinibbio tends to be able. And Ponzinibbio is dangerous in the pocket, a really good boxer, really heavy hands. It's just going to be tough for him to close distance and land, effective shots with a good volume against a guy like Holland who has the length to stay on the outside and pick him apart that way. In a fight that goes late, I could certainly see Ponzinibbio having bigger moments, but taking minutes or even rounds. But again, I think Holland's going to jump out to an early start. I think the speed, the youth advantage on his side is going to play a factor in deciding this one. And he's been more technical against guys on the feet, I would say. He's able to showcase more skills and has a wider arsenal of strikes than what Ponzinibbio's shown. So he's the pick for me. I don't really love him at this number. I mean, Ponzinibbio, the power and, pulling off the win his last time out. I don't think at 2-1, it's really a spot I'm going to be betting Holland, which, is a change for me. I'm normally betting him most numbers under 200, but, at a line like this, I probably won't be getting involved too much just in what I view as a dangerous matchup.
I'm totally with you. I'm on the Holland side. I don't like the price at all, though. The thing about Kevin Holland, as talented as he is, pretty much a zero fight IQ, makes terrible decisions in the cage, pretty much gave away the Stephen Thompson fight just for the fans. We've seen him make plenty of mistakes similarly at times. I don't know. He's not always in there to win as much as he's in there to put on a show, and I just don't like laying big minus money on fighters like that, obviously. So the thing about Ponzinibbio, I mean, he was getting pieced up by Morono. I know we were on opposite sides of that when I had Ponzo, but I was holding my breath on most of that fight. Morono really getting off good strikes on Ponzinibbio, who, I mean, he is very powerful, very dangerous striker, but he's definitely there to be hit. We saw that a lot in the Michel Pereira fight. The Jeff Neal fight, which was a close one, took a ton of damage in that one as well. And I mean, the way Holland is very aggressive on the feet, I do think this is a spot where he could probably finish Ponzinibbio in the first or second rounds. But all that being said, like I said, I mean, the price minus 250 and wider at a lot of these books now, it's just tough to feel great about that, knowing how inconsistent he is in terms of fight IQ. We also heard Holland going into this fight, like asking Ponzinibbio, hey, why don't we do a catchweight so we could enjoy good food while we're in Miami and stuff. It's just, I don't know. There's just something about him. He never takes himself as seriously as he probably should. I mean, he's fun. He's going to get fights. He's a fan favorite for sure. I mean, I enjoy watching him fight, but at the same time, to lay a big minus number on him just never, ever feels good knowing he's very likely to pull a stunt or do something stupid. So I like Holland here. I think he gets it done and probably by KO in the first or second round. But at the same time, I mean, to lay close to 270, and I'm guessing it inflates as people continue to put money on him for parlays after weigh-ins. As long as he makes weight, yeah, the price is just getting out of hand. Maybe you put a little poke on him inside the distance. But yeah, it's a tough matchup. Ponzo's good. He's just a shell of who he once was. This was a guy who was like a top 5 contender before he got seriously injured. Back when he was like knocking out Neil Magny, and then he was out for 2 years, came back, dealt with a ton of injuries, internal and external. Just not the same fighter he was back then. 36 years old now, certainly in the twilight of his career. Still has the power as we saw against Morono, but Holland's pretty durable. So we saw that in a big way against Stephen Thompson. That fight got called. He had a ton of clean shots though, so I think Holland's durable enough to stay out of trouble. Should get it done here. Likely by KO, but probably would not lay that money line price.
Yep, I agree with you there. I think it's going to be a Holland fight, but just tough to pull the trigger at that number. And now the main card opener, 18-year-old Raul Rosas Jr. facing Christian Rodriguez in what's now his second UFC fight. Opening up this pay-per-view, you got a lot of eyes on him. Raul Rosas, what are your thoughts here? Are you backing the 18-year-old here in this matchup?
Yeah, so I'm going to be honest. I'm not 100% decided on this one. Obviously, the hype's on Rosas. The UFC's trying to set him up. They're putting him on the start of a pay-per-view. But this is a major, major step up in competition. I don't think people are necessarily accounting for that. Christian Rodriguez made his debut up a weight class against one of the best grapplers at featherweight in Jonathan Pierce. Not only did he hang in that fight, he won the third round from Pierce. So I think defensively he's solid. I mean, everyone's talking about how he's easy to take down. I think that's by design. We saw that in the Joshua Weems fight. No, I don't rate Joshua Weems high, but he really just baited him into that anaconda choke. This is a kid with a really strong choke series. Was a pretty credentialed wrestler, I think, in high school. I don't know if he went to college, but he's an underrated grappler. So this is just an interesting spot for me. I think he's the much better striker on the feet. But all that being said, he does give up his back when he is getting back to his feet. I don't think he'll have trouble getting back to his feet here, but I could see Rojas maybe like sinking in a body triangle, choking him out, something like that. But at minus 245 on an 18-year-old kid in a tough matchup, not against some old guy on his way out of the UFC, but another bright prospect at 135. I don't know. I think the line's a little bit wide here, so not convinced yet. I want to see weigh-ins. Going to listen to a few more interviews. Obviously, Rojas, super, super confident kid. Rodriguez seems to have his head on his shoulders, but I do know he just left Fight Ready to go back to Rufus Sport, which is giving me some pause. I would have preferred he'd stay to Fight Ready. I think that's the better camp of the two. But I want to see how he looks at weigh-ins. I know there's been some narrative that when he's focused, he's a much better fighter than when he's kind of coasting, but I think he knows what's on the line here. Rojas, one of the more hyped prospects in the entire UFC, and if he can take some of that shine here, certainly that would propel his stock as a 25-year-old in a loaded and tough division to get any sort of momentum. So really good fight here. Rojas probably the side if it was like closer to even, but at like minus 250, I'm just having trouble pulling that trigger. So I'm going to spend a little more time on this. Anyone watching, certainly check out the article on Saturday to see if I end up on the underdog. I know you're probably on Rojas, but I would not sleep on C-Rod here at all.
Yeah, and I mean, C-Rod, 10 years now training martial arts. He started with Duke Rufus. I think the move back to Rufus Sport could help a lot. He's the better striker. He has good boxing, good shots to the body and head, and then he mixes in kicks decently as well. I think Rosas is the more, willing to throw out those flashy attacks, those, bigger kicks, those knees and the sort. But really, he's going to want to get this fight to the mat against C-Rod. And yeah, I think while C-Rod's grappling is solid, I think defensively we have seen holes. And Rosa's ability to take the back will be a key factor. We saw it in the last fight, how easily he got onto the back. And, as you stated with the Geddes with Rodriguez exposing it, there's going to be a lot of opportunity for this kid to just jump on there and start working on the neck. It seems easy, like for a guy under 20, like they just hop on your back and start working. Like a guy like Chase Hooper, a guy like Raul Rosas, they do these, they get into these grappling exchanges and then just work from there because they're agile, they're quick, they're longer than most of these guys. And again, Rosas here at bantamweight, he's gonna grow more as he continues to age, continues to train, get bigger. But at bantamweight right now, but facing a guy like Rodriguez who is a bantamweight, I think Rosas is going to have success. I think he's going to get the fight to the mat and probably find another win here. Otherwise, he wouldn't be getting this matchup. I don't think the UFC is looking to see this 18-year-old get his face beaten in by, a lot of punishers. I think Rodriguez is a tougher test than him than, the previous bout. But, I think this is a spot Rosas is going to be able to find a finish and, keep the streak going, at least for one more fight. I don't know how high this kid's ceiling is, but I think from what we've seen thus far, out of his grappling especially, he's going to have the edge here against Christian Rodriguez.
Yeah, and I do agree with you. I think if we're just talking like grappling versus grappling, as far as BJJ goes, he is the better of the two. But I do just encourage folks to kind of look back to that Contender Series fight against Mando Gutierrez, a fight he won, but a fight he could not finish, an inferior opponent to Rodriguez. He got swept multiple times. And like we saw in the Williams fight, I mean, Rodriguez is willing to go down to create sweeps and reversals. So it wouldn't shock me to see something like that happen here. So at the underdog price, I do think there's value. But like you said, I mean, they do want Rojas to win here. I'm not going to deny that, but again, the UFC's plans don't always fall in line the way they want. So We'll see. Very good fight though, and this is a major step up over a guy in Jay Perrin who has pretty much no grappling ability.
Yeah, Jay Perrin's not not quite a UFC fighter anymore. We're moving now
Unfortunately.
to the preliminary portion of the card, closing out with the featured prelim, a middleweight bout of Chris Curtis and Kelvin Gastelum. This is a really good fight, close to pick 'em odds. Gastelum the slight favorite at current. It's weird because Curtis's his best work's done on the feet. Landing first, moving forward, throwing out higher volume than his opponents. He lands 5.8 significant strikes per minute thus far in the UFC. And, while that's about the success against a lot of guys, against a guy in Gastelum who has a great chin, has great boxing, it's a pretty tough draw for Curtis. I see why the odds are where they are. I'd say he's the more well-rounded guy, but I could see him getting turned back in the spot again against a better technical striker, as was the case when he fought Jack Hermanson. Just somebody who understands distance a bit better, understands winning at the UFC level a bit more. It's just winning hasn't come for Gastelum as of late, so that's why I'm hesitant to back him. I won't be backing him in the spot. Well, I'll probably dig in more into this fight, as we get closer to the end of the week. I do think Curtis is going to be the play for me. He's been the more active fighter, and I think if he's moving forward, if he's landing first against Gastelum, he's going to be winning those minutes. He just needs to avoid getting caught in the pocket in those exchanges by the guy with more power and with the superior boxing. But yeah, I think going up in this matchup against the Southpaw, we've seen him have some success against Southpaws in the past. I think Chris Curtis is the pick for me.
Yeah, I'm on the Gastelum side here. I do have some pause just because of the long layoff, because he has been forced to pull out of fights. But I'll say this: I mean, we're talking about camp changes. He's been at Fight Ready with Cejudo. I mean, you watch some of Cejudo's videos, just him watching fights on the couch. You see Gastelum with him there all the time, and I think that's great because a guy like Gastelum, he certainly gets in his own head. I mean, he doesn't always have good discipline with his diet, anything like that. But I think being around someone like Cejudo is such a major advantage for him. We haven't seen him with his shirt off yet at weigh-ins, but I can already tell just looking at embedded, he's in better shape than he has been in his last few fights. I think he's going to try to mix in some grappling here. Chris Curtis, 100% takedown defense in the UFC. I don't know that that's going to hold through this fight, and even if it doesn't, I do like Gastelum striking at range better. I'd like to see him kick a lot here. Not typically a guy who kicks a ton, but we did see it in the Adesanya fight. The best strike he landed was that fourth round head kick. I think he has that in his bag. Really good movement in and out of range. Like you said, I mean, Curtis, most of his wins have been knocking guys out, and Gastelum's chin is just ridiculous. So I favor Gastelum here. It is going to be a close fight, though, and a very fun fight, one that should primarily take place at striking range. And yeah, I think I'll probably put a little play on Gastelum. There was actually dog money on him earlier in the week, so I kind of missed the boat on it, so I'm not going to go too heavy. But at the same time, I just think level of competition, he's been facing much better fighters. He's shown a very high level of striking, and Curtis, while he's a good striker, I mean, he's outstriking guys who really just aren't on that level. So I'm going to go with Gastelum here, but I'm not going to say it's like a sure thing or anything like that. Curtis has looked great as an underdog time and time again. I just think this is a bit bigger of a step up in competition than people are accounting for.
Yeah, it is a tough fight. I think a lot of people see Gastelum trying to mix in the grappling here. As you say, I don't think he finds any success in doing so. I think Curtis is really stout when it comes to that takedown defense, and until he's fighting like a pure grappler, someone at middleweight who can execute takedowns well. I don't see him falling victim to somebody like Gastelum who has scored takedowns in the past, is good at it. I just don't think he's going to be the one to be taking Curtis to the mat over and over here. Um,
Yeah, I don't think he'd chain wrestle or anything, but
right.
he could win
So
some minutes.
should be a good fight. Should be a very competitive one. Next bout, women's strawweight matchup. Luana Pinheiro taking on Michelle Waterson Gomez. What are your thoughts on this matchup? Pinheiro sitting now as the minus 175 favorite.
Yeah, this is a tricky one, and I think it's kind of a theme. Like, I'm going with the vets in a lot of these matchups. I mean, I already like Fawn over Yanez. I'm talking about Gastelum over Curtis, and I kind of see the same thing here in Waterson Gomez over Pinheiro. I mean, Pinheiro definitely the younger fighter, more athletic, definitely going to have a speed advantage at times. But yeah, I think people are sleeping on Waterson. I mean, she's been losing to really tough opponents. There's no denying that. We just saw Holly Holm have one of the best fights we've seen her have in the past, I don't know, 5 years. And she is the main training partner of Michelle Waterson. Watterson. Watterson posting pictures on Instagram today looks completely ripped and shredded. Cough, cough, USADA, cough, cough. But yeah, I think she knows this is the twilight of her career. She's going to go all in right now. I mean, you look at who she's losing to: Esparza, who's the champ, Rodriguez, Lemos, and yeah, I mean Pinheiro. She kind of bailed out of a fight with Randa Marcos. She's impressive, but at the same time, I mean, look who she's impressive against. So I just rate Watterson higher. I think she's going to be the better submission grappler. I think she's the better technical striker. The thing that is tough to get excited about with Watterson is she likes to throw strikes outside of her opponent's range. Like there's that meme where she's like fighting a ghost in there, like there's someone between her and her opponent. Very frustrating to watch at times. But to me, she's just a better fighter, and this is really a levels play. I think getting her at dog money is plenty of value. So I like her as an underdog in the spot. Pinheiro certainly good, certainly live. But when you're saying a favorite is live, it tells you the value is probably on the underdog. So I like her. Really like that she's been in camp with Holly Holm, who just looked outstanding in her last fight. That's a big reason that I'm going to be on Watterson here.
Yeah, I really don't like this fight at all. I mean, Watterson, like her path to victory, it's going to be on the feet, like push kick, karate style, like keeping the distance. If she's going to be grappling here, I mean, Pinheiro's shown to be pretty comfortable on the mat. 7 takedowns in her last 2 fights. The ability to win positions there, and I mean, Watterson Gomez just getting choked out. Not a great look if it's going to be a fight where these two are rolling. Yeah, no, I agree. The level of competition has been, a pretty decisive advantage to Watterson. And yeah, I may end up on her this week just based on the price of these two. But Pinheiro probably should be the one, favored. I would agree with, just based on, how Watterson has been trending as of late. I'm really not looking to bet on her. But certainly could win this fight, whether it be on volume striking or volume grappling, as you say. I just see the latter being a tougher path for her against a Brazilian in Pereira that has shown a lot of comfort in those exchanges on the mat. So 8 years younger too, I think, or 7. Not really a matchup I'm going to be getting involved in. Women's strawweight 30-year-olds, but yeah, if I had to pick right now, it's Pinheiro. But check out our write-up at the end of the week on Dine Sports for the official prediction. Not certain the bout order here, but looks like middleweights will what we break down next with Gerald Meerschaert and Joe Pyfer. Pyfer sitting a -200 favorite here against Meerschaert, who 4-1 winning streak, turning back a lot of good prospects, just choked out Bruno Silva. Certainly a live underdog in this spot. Somebody I'm going to dig into a bit more and maybe taking here. I mean, a grappling advantage over Joe Pyfer, you have to say that at the very least. We've seen what Meerschaert's capable of on the mat. We've seen him able to draw out fights, make it sloppy early and, take advantage in the latter rounds against opponents. And Pyfer got an easy draw facing Amedovski in his UFC debut. A soft matchup. He unloaded. He got the finish as was expected. Massive favorite in that spot. But Meerschaert's a much tougher test, and we've seen what he's able to do to these guys as they're starting out in the UFC, turning back some, losing to the higher level competition, guys like Hamzat and the sort. But yeah, if Pyfer's not able to get that early offense going, land clean strikes on Meerschaert, I see him having a lot more difficulty as this fight goes on. If Meerschaert starts hitting takedowns, Pyfer has hit takedowns of his own, but obviously he's not going to be shooting in on a guy like Meerschaert with such high level submission skills. So I think this is a close fight right now. My lean's Meerschaert as the underdog, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, that's my lead as well. We talk about the UFC wanting to build guys up. I think they would like to see Pyfer built up. Obviously, he's kind of Dana's pet. I mean, Dana's helped him out, paid his rent, a bunch of other things he's done for him. He really likes the kid because of his Contender Series performance. But yeah, I mean, the thing about Meerschaert, kind of similar to Holland in a different way. It's not like Meerschaert's in there playing with his food and being an idiot. Very high IQ fighter, but super inconsistent. There's just nights where he doesn't seem to show up. Did not look good in that Christoph Jocko fight at all. But then he goes out against Bruno Silva, a guy who gave a tough 3 rounds to the champ in Pereira, and he looks amazing. So it's like, which guy are we going to get here? So it's really tough to know. So yeah, I want to dig a little bit more. I mean, Pyfer is the next new thing. He's another shiny prospect the UFC is looking to build, but we really haven't seen him find much success against top level competition. Definitely the more powerful striker here. I do like that he's been grappling with Fury Pro. He did win a decision over Eric Anders grappling, which is good to see. But yeah, if he's rolling around with Mearshart here, he's probably going to get caught. I mean, one of the losses earlier in his career was via submission to some guy in Jonovan Patty. I don't even know who that is. Just not a great look. So yeah, tough spot here. Pfeiffer's been towering over a lot of his opponents. Mearshart is actually a lot bigger than most people think. He's going to have a slight reach advantage here over Pfeiffer. Is Mearshart chinny? I don't know. Obviously, he looked like he was against Kamzat when he got dusted with one punch, but at the same time, I mean, his chin has held up well in a lot of other fights. So there's just so many question marks on Gerald Mearshart. But then when you look at the price and you're getting him around plus 160, plus 170, I think it is maybe worth the gamble just to see which version shows up. So I'm going to do a little bit more digging. This is definitely a volatile spot. I think the UFC would love to see Pfeiffer win here, but it is a tough matchup. And like you said, I mean, Mearshart's been tested. He's put a lot of these prospects down before. Wouldn't shock me at all to see him pull off the upset. So that's my lean for now. But at the same time, this is not a confident play by any stretch.
And just curious, who would you favor if this fight were to go the distance here, full 15 minutes? Which side would you want?
Oh man, that's tough. I mean, they throw similar volume, both average similar takedowns. I mean, Pfeiffer's probably going to land the bigger shots, but Mearshart's going to have a lot of cage control. I'd slightly favor Mearshart, but again, I mean, if it's going to be that close, you probably go with the underdog and maybe bet something like the split, and hope you get some extra value that way. What about you?
No, that's sort of where I was at. I was thinking if Pfeiffer is the play, if you're going to end up on that side, maybe the finish is going to be the look by knockout. As again, he's going to want to strike with Mearshart here, and I think in a fight where he's getting grinded out, or whether it be a Mearshart submission, those would be the clear paths to victory. So Pfeiffer by knockout would probably be the play if you're looking that way. But
Yeah, I agree.
I'm leaning Mearshart as well.
I'm with you.
All right. Next up, heavyweights. We'll take a look at this fight between Carl Williams and Chase Sherman. We were robbed of a fight of the year contender with Chase Sherman facing Chris Barnett this week. Now Williams stepping in as a short notice replacement as a large favorite here, sitting minus 500, even more in some places against Chase Sherman. Mostly due to the grappling deficiency we've seen out of Chase Sherman in the UFC. We've seen him get smushed on the mat by guys like Jake Collier, Alexander Romanov, who's obviously a very talented grappler, but so is this guy, Carl Williams. We've seen him dominating guys on the mat thus far. His UFC debut against Lucas Bresky, 10 minutes of control time, 8 of 13 takedowns landed successfully. And yeah, that's going to be the path here. Against a guy like Sherman, who's really only dangerous on the feet, a guy with good boxing in close, and somebody who was cut from the UFC, now back in the UFC, starting to gain a little more weight, weighed in 240s last time, or no, 250s last time out, and may not be all there in terms of the skill he had once had. Facing a guy younger, coming in, starting out his career in Williams, utilizing effective grappling well, probably going to look a minus 500 favorite in this spot. I think he's going to take down Chase Sherman. I think he's going to grind him out on the mat here. Just evidence of what we've seen in the recent performances from Williams. I don't think he's a super high level heavyweight, but he has better grappling than most heavyweights and certainly better grappling than Chase Sherman. So it's going to be the pick for me, Carl Williams here.
Yeah, so I'm leaning to the Sherman side, I will say that. But at the same time, I mean, there's certainly a few holes to poke in this. So, like you said, Chris Barnett, one of the funnest heavyweights, certainly not one of the most talented, but we were robbed of that fight as Barnett was forced to pull out. So, Williams is taking this fight on an about 1 week notice. He did dominate Luca Bresci under a month ago, and he is a heavyweight. So, you got to wonder, is he staying in gym? Is he staying in camp? Is he super ready coming into this fight? I know Sherman's been training at ATT, so he's pretty focused. I think both these, or Williams is at ATT Atlanta. That's the difference. But yeah, Sherman from the area. A lot of ATT guys on this card, obviously with Masvidal and Mike Brown and all that. But yeah, I mean, I think you're right. Williams should be able to take him down, but we have seen Sherman get up in the past. Bresky's terrible and undersized as a heavyweight, so I wasn't shocked at all to see Williams dominate him there. But yeah, it wouldn't shock me to see Sherman get up a few times, maybe stuff a takedown or two, and the longer he could drag this out, maybe he could make this close. And it is heavyweights, it is low level, so to be paying such a wide price on a guy like Carl Williams, who really hasn't been tested extensively at this level. Not that Sherman's some great test either, but 400, 450, 500 seems a little bit insane to me. Don't think I'm going to get there taking Sherman as an underdog. This is a very different matchup than what he was going to see against Barnett. I don't know that his takedown defense is going to be massively improved, but he is a big guy. He is a tall guy. If he could kind of stick his butt against the cage, open his legs up, and create a wide base, maybe he has a chance here to frustrate Williams a little bit and take him to places he hasn't necessarily had to go before. So, well, I'm with you on not on Sherman, on Williams. I think stylistically he should be able to execute a wrestling heavy game plan here. It's not like Williams is a big finisher on the ground. We haven't seen huge ground and pound out of him. Certainly doesn't have much of a submission game either. So yeah, if Sherman's better prepared, Williams kind of coming off the couch taking this fight on 1 week notice. I just don't want to lay that juice. So I'm going to spend a little more time digging into this. I would love to get to Sherman as an underdog, but at the same time, I mean, it's Chase Sherman. Do I really want to get to him as an underdog? I just think the price is out of hand, especially on a very inexperienced heavyweight fight, taking it on 1 week notice.
Yeah, and just to touch again on the minus 500 price tag, not really another way you could play Williams, in my opinion. The guy's gone to decision in two straight.
The
Probably
overs might
would,
be good here.
yeah, I mean, I would lean to the decision as well. It's just like, how bad is Sherman on the mat?
Yeah, this
Because
is one of the lower
if
level fights
Collier
on
can
the
take
card.
getting out of there early, yeah. So probably don't want to be involved too heavily, but yeah, but Williams stepping in, I think he's able to smush him there, but we will see from Saturday. All right, the early prelims. Lupita Godinez will be facing Cynthia Calvillo in a women's strawweight bout. Godinez minus 270 at current. Been around that price all week against the plus 200 Calvillo. An interesting fight. I mean, Calvillo is normally one who only wins with effective wrestling. Has lost the 4 fights in a row coming into this one, and now facing a high level wrestler in Godinez. I like Godinez a lot. I was heavy on her last fight against Angela Hill, and she didn't get the win. But that was going up against a talented striker in Angela Hill. That's about all Angela Hill is. Where Calvillo is really most effective in those wrestling in the wrestling department. I feel like Godinez having a decisive wrestling advantage over most girls will poise her well to win this fight against Calvillo, who's now 35 years old, 4-fight losing streak. I think it makes a lot of sense that Godinez is the favorite here. I'm just surprised to see her as wide as she is, given that last performance and her failing to live up to that large price tag set. So I like her in this spot. This is another fight that I'm not super involved in. The 3 girl fights on this card, I'm just not going to be investing much in, especially with how women's MMA has treated me the first quarter of this year. But yeah, Godinez is the pick for me here. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I'm with you. I know I'm taking a lot of bets against the younger fighter on this card. This is not one of those cases. To me, Calvillo is pretty much washed. She looked okay against Nina Nunez her last time out. I had a pretty decent play on Nunez as the underdog. Felt good cashing that and then watching Nunez retire after the fight. Very rare you see a fighter win and then retire. That's been very, very rare lately. So good to see that there. But yeah, the thing about Calvillo, like you said, really not all that great of a striker. Most of her wins have come grappling against smaller girls, and Godinez, very similar fighter. Most of her wins come grappling against smaller girls. So I think Godinez is the better wrestler. I know her sisters are all like highly credentialed wrestlers. And yeah, this just feels like 2 fighters heading in different directions. And where, yeah, Calvillo has been losing to tougher competition. I mean, it's really not the type of gap we were talking about with Fontanes or who else, Gaslam Curtis or anything like that. But I mean, she's coming off a loss to Nunez. Godinez is coming off a loss to Hill, who's definitely a better fighter than Nunez at this point in her career, in my opinion. So this is a closer matchup in terms of level, but the age discrepancy is still there. All this just to say I like Godinez here. Really don't love the price, like you said. These women's fights have been tough to call. And the thing about Loopy, I mean, she's great when she's on point. Like we saw her in that Carnelosi fight, look amazing. Like Rogan in DC, I think that was a pay-per-view card. They're like talking her up like a future contender. It was ridiculous. But she's super inconsistent too. And I mean, we have a lot of inconsistent fighters on this card. I definitely put Loopy in that category. But all that being said, she should win this fight. She should be the more aggressive grappler. I think she can sweep Calvillo if she is taken down at any point. And yeah, just two fighters headed in different directions. I'll take Godinez here. Don't love the price though. Wouldn't encourage anyone to play her heavily on the money line.
Yeah, I don't know if you feel the same. The prelim portion of this card really tough to find bets to feel confident in, at least compared to the main card portion. But yeah, that's one. Godinez is the pick for me. Next up, Ignacio Bahamondes taking on Trey Ogden. This is a bet that came together on short notice. Bahamondes was initially set to face Nicholas Mata, but that fight fell out this week. And Ogden had a matchup with Torres earlier last month. Cut weight for that fight. That fight fell out. Now this bout at 160 pounds. These two will be facing off. Bahamondes, there's some holes in his grappling that I think Ogden's going to be able to, perhaps take advantage of. I just think Bahamondes is the much better striker, uses his length well. Really like what I've seen out of him on the feet. That sick knockout of Roosevelt Roberts. Yeah, just really clean striking, very creative with it. Going to be the better striker than Ogden, going to land at a higher clip, able to put out good volume, follow behind his jab, and mixing good kicks as well. Snappy with his kicks. Ogden does his best work on the mat. I don't know if he's going to be able to effectively grapple for 15 minutes on a short notice fight, cutting weight for the second time in 2-3 weeks. And it's not like he's a dominant presence on the mat either. I think I understand why he's plus 275 at this point and opened closer to plus 220, plus 230 when this fight was initially announced. Money coming in on Bahamondes, young prospect, still a lot to be proven. Still some holes, not only in his defensive grappling, but a bit defensively on the feet as well. I just don't think Ogden's going to be the type of guy to take advantage of it. Well, on a full camp, maybe he'd be able to grind him out, win this fight, whether it be late or on the scorecards. But yeah, I think Bahamondes gets an early lead with his striking here, uses his length, keeps Ogden at the end of his punches, and wins this fight. I could see him getting a finish as well.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm on Bahamondes here. He does have some holes in his wrestling ability, but he actually has pretty good jiu-jitsu, decent choke series. So if this fight does hit the mat, I think he's actually live to sweep or maybe pull off a sub. I'd like him better inside the distance than by KO, which is where I think a lot of people are playing him. Don't get too greedy. Just take him inside the distance. I think it's a really good play here. Ogden getting a lot of love because of that performance against, what's his name, Zell Huber. But Zell Huber just showed up like William Knight that fight. Really didn't do anything, didn't throw any strikes, just kind of stood there. I think the lights were just a little bit too big for the young kid in that spot. Ogden took advantage. Ogden looked decent against Jordan Levitt. Really didn't do anything to, stand out though. So Ogden's one of these guys. He's tough. He's gritty. He's got a chin. He's going to hang in there and make it a scrap. But I do see Bahamondes as just the better finisher, both standing and on the mat. Ogden might be able to take him down a couple times, but I don't even know that that's going to be to his advantage significantly. So I like Bahamondes here. I do think the money line's out of hand, but I'll probably play him inside the distance. And I feel pretty good about it. Like you said, having to cut weight again. Both these guys taking this matchup on short notice, but more of a short notice date for Ogden. So I do like the spot here for Bahamondes, who has been out for a while. But at the same time, I think we're going to see the best version of him that we've ever seen. Fighting out of a good camp. I know, is it Bilal Muhammad who's really high on him? I forget. But yeah, 25 years old. Going to continue to improve. One of the only Chilean fighters on the roster. I think the UFC really wants to build him up here in this Miami spot. So I like Bahamondes to get it done inside the distance.
Yep, me as well. And then featherweights, Steve Garcia and Shailan Nurdenbeka. Good matchup here. Tough one to call. I mean, Nuremberg, a sizable favorite, minus 190, minus 200 in some spots. Earlier in the week, even larger. So some money has come in on Steve Garcia. And, Garcia's solid, good wrestle boxing out of the southpaw stance. Probably has the advantage striking in this spot. But Nuremberg's ability to mix in grappling, to win minutes in fights, I think is a huge factor here. I think Will Garcia would be content to roll a bit with Nuremberg. That's not where his bread's buttered. That's not where he's going to be able to, take this fight convincingly. He's going to want to stand and strike. He's going to want to put hands on Nuremberg, a smaller guy, a guy who's not really as effective in landing clean strikes or power shots on the feet. But we have seen a lot out of Nuremberg since joining the UFC in terms of positives. I like his aggressiveness when it comes to chasing takedowns, averaging more than 3 landed per fight thus far. And I think that's going to be the path to him in the spot. I think there are just a couple unknowns surrounding these guys. Really, when it comes to Garcia, his defensive grappling, what he's going to be able to do to keep this fight on the feet, if that is where his best work is going to be done. As a sizable underdog, I think he deserves a look. I'm just not sure I'm going to be getting to the window with him or really having much action on this fight at all. Just based on the clash of styles, I expect to see kind of tough to predict if Nuremberg does wrestle, if he's going to be able to effectively wrestle, and what Garcia is going to look like if this fight does hit the mat, where I expect it to go. Nuremberg probably winning this fight using his wrestling, but still got to dig a bit more into this one.
Yeah, I mean, this is a tough one for sure. Nerdebecki coming off that fight against Derek Minner that most people think was fixed. The reason James Krause is no longer part of the UFC against Derek Minner, where Minner hurt his leg and then just continued to throw it until he was TKO'd by Nuremberg. So obviously not much we could take from that performance. He did look really good against TJ Brown, though, as an underdog. I thought that was an impressive performance, like you said, where he was able to lean on his wrestling. That's going to be his advantage in this spot. Surprisingly, though, and this is kind of shocking to me, I don't know if it's just because of the matchups, but Steve Garcia, 100% takedown defense in the UFC, and he has faced guys like Luis Pena. We saw him last time out against Chase Hooper, just completely take the kid out, break our hearts. I know we like cheering for Hoop. He's a fun kid, but yeah, I mean, Garcia, another fighter, super inconsistent, did not show up for the Machete fight where he got KO'd almost instantly. But yeah, he's on American soil here. I mean, looked pretty great last time out against Hooper, but at the same time, I mean, if you're gonna just overwhelm Hooper with strikes, I don't know. It's tricky because we can't take anything from that last fight against Hooper. Really, can't take anything from Nuremberg's win over Minner in a fight that was probably fixed. So you're really going back, and I think both these guys probably improved since then. Garcia, 30 years old, also fighting out of Jackson Wink, same camp as Michelle Watterson, who's also on this card. They've been having some success lately, but yeah, I mean, Nuremberg, very aggressive when he is standing. I think Garcia is the better and more dangerous striker. But yeah, Nuremberg's been pretty durable, especially in that Culibao fight, a fight that we saw Nuremberg lose. He took a lot of clean shots, and I don't know. It's a tough one to call. So I just think looking at the line in a fight that I consider to be pretty close, there's probably value on Garcia here. But this is another one I want to spend a little bit more time digging in on. Maybe I can find an edge in an interview or something like that, or just watching film or weigh-ins. I mean, this is a closer fight than I think the line suggests, so I think the value is on Garcia right now, but it's really tough to get excited about backing either of these guys with your money.
Yeah, I could see the line continuing to close at weigh-ins. Again, Garcia is going to be the bigger guy. And just to touch on that last fight, Nuremberg would do the same thing to Chase Hooper, one would think. Good wrestling, he's just going to stuff the takedowns, beat his ass. So, I mean, we'll see. Yeah, we'll see. Poor Hoop. Hoop's going to be a champ one day, but not today. Last fight to break down, women's strawweight bout to open up the card, Jacqueline Amorim facing Sam Hughes. Kind of a better read on this fight than I feel the other two women's MMA bouts. So Amorim is a good grappler. I think it's going to be a likely finish by armbar here, just based on the jiu-jitsu advantage she has over Sam Hughes. She's going to be looking for the sub, 5 wins, all by submission, or 5 submission wins thus far. And Sam Hughes is somebody we've seen in the past taken down. She does well getting up, rallying in fights. She could probably find herself on the feet, in the second and third round and end up winning in this matchup. but I also see her getting in an early submission attempt from Amorim, and yeah, it'll be up to her to defend. We've seen the armbar pulled up in the past, but Amorim has a pretty good series of submissions and just better jiu-jitsu overall than Sam Hughes has shown. And yeah, I mean, Hughes needs to keep the feet, needs to get up quickly here. I'm not sure if she's able to do so. And yeah, as the odds indicate, Amorim making her debut, a sizable favorite, minus 270 at current. So well, one would expect her to get a finish, get a submission win here. But again, in her debut, you may want to go with Sam Hughes. Sam Hughes, gaining as an underdog this week, a bigger number, which seems a bit crazy, just the money that's coming in on this, Brazilian girl. But again, I think Amorim is probably going to get the submission. I like what I've seen out of her grappling. And just compared to that of Hughes, 30-year-old, who really has struggled when it comes to fights that are prolonged on the mat. So give me Amorim here, probably by armbar.
Yep, I'm with you. I like Amorim. I've actually bet on her before in the LFA. She is the current strawweight champ there, obviously vacating that title as she has been promoted. Really, really talented grappler. I mean, the one knock on her is that we haven't seen her against really great competition. Most of the girls she's fighting probably aren't UFC level. I mean, Loveth Young, decent name. I don't know that she ever gets to the show. Sam Hughes, tough and gritty, but at the same time, only a 47% takedown defense, and I expect that to be the difference here. So I like Amorim. I like her inside the distance. I like her by submission. I mean, you can maybe just play the inside. I don't think there's going to be a big discrepancy in that line. Not really a girl who knocks anyone out. She does have a KO win though on her record, which came standing. So maybe you just don't want to get greedy on that line either. But I do think she gets it done inside the distance. Hughes, though, definitely the veteran here, tough and gritty. But at the same time, I just think, yeah, UFC is looking to build a more. They've been doing this with a lot of these young girls to open cards. They want them to win these fights. And I think this is another piece of that narrative, another American top team fighter. Yeah, I like Amorim here. I think she gets it done. The line's probably going to get a little bit out of hand, so just play her inside the distance in all likelihood. And regardless, don't put too much money on this one. Pretty low level matchup, but Amorim definitely the higher ceiling in the division. And yeah, just the much superior grappler. And Hughes doesn't have the takedown defense to keep this standing. So I'm on Amorim.
Yeah, and for Sam Page Hughes, never a good sign when we say gritty as your best descriptor.
Yeah, when you're
so,
tough and gritty.
yeah, not ideal. Well, this is gonna be a great card. Really looking forward to UFC 287 this weekend. Again, you'll want to tune in from Miami. An awesome card. Israel Adesanya. Can he get his belt back against Alex Pereira in their rematch? We will know on Saturday, and on Saturday, you will see our full write-up with a breakdown of each of these fights on Dine Sports, full analysis and a official prediction for each of these bouts. Nick, it's been great breaking it down with you tonight. You enjoy these fights this weekend.
Likewise, man. Looking forward to it. Good luck, everyone. Take care. Let's make some money.